Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Good Boxing Podcast with your host, Josh Saez. Episode 76 is here, and I have a very entertaining episode for you today. Recently, Floyd Mayweather came out with an Instagram post saying and basically comparing his career as something that Conor McGregor is essentially trying to copy. And he's trying to say that, all in all, this is me just kind of summarizing more or less what he's saying, that Conor McGregor basically does everything he's done. He talks trash, is brash, and he does so in order to sell pay-per-views. The only thing that Floyd Mayweather said is different is Floyd never lost in his sport, and now Conor can't win in his sport. Floyd Mayweather never lost, not one time, and Conor McGregor seemingly loses like crazy. However, boxing and UFC, MMA, whatever you want me to kind of call it, are two different sports. In boxing, you do exercise one martial art where you're using your hands. There's a set of rules, and it's hands versus hands. In MMA, you do deal with a bunch of different things. You have to deal with kicks, elbows, takedowns, etc. And I'm not going to sit here and say that one sport is particularly harder than the other. Each has its own challenges. Sometimes when you're fighting in boxing, sure, you only have to worry about hands, but you're also worrying about the best hands in the world. You're fighting the best punchers, the best fighters with their hands in the world. You're fighting boxers, you're fighting brawlers. You're fighting very high level, highly skilled strikers who've mastered the sweet science. Some hit, don't get hit. Some can punch, some can brawl. Some are volume punchers. Some can do a little bit of both. Some are counter punchers. There's a plethora of different styles in boxing, and I'm not going to sit here and say that UFC's any harder than boxing because you have to deal with someone that can kick or elbow or submissions or takedown. Is it any more brutal? Optically, I would sit here and say that yes, UFC is a little more brutal because of the blood, the elbows, the cuts, and the submissions. Sometimes you can break people's knees, you can turn, twist, and contort bodies, break bones, etc. So would I sit here and say it's a little more brutal in that sense? Yes, but in boxing, I feel with the kind of strikers that you fight, you can really take a lot of damage over your career, and I think you can get knocked out in a way that could potentially kill you. So I'm not going to sit here and say that any one sport is harder, any one sport is better. It's all preference, and honestly, both sports bring different challenges to the table. However, one thing I'm going to say here is in Floyd Mayweather's exclamation and pretty much his declaration is, and I quote, he mentions that he talked a lot of trash, he's the best, Conor's fighting his leftovers. This is all because Conor McGregor and Manny Pacquiao, there were rumors swirling that the two would engage in an exhibition/crossover fight very similar to the one that he embarked on with Conor McGregor. So Floyd Mayweather feels that a lot of people emulate him and try to copy him in the way he conducts himself and kind of the events that he wants. Pacquiao fought Floyd Mayweather, made the most money ever. Conor McGregor wants to fight Manny Pacquiao and potentially make another massive payday, right? When you think of the biggest stars in boxing, you think Mayweather, Pacquiao, and then, of course, Canelo Alvarez. So I don't really fault Conor McGregor for aiming at Manny Pacquiao in a fight, but Floyd Mayweather thinks that Conor McGregor is essentially swagger jacking him and biting off of him, essentially trying to be him. But he feels that he doesn't get the glory and love that Conor McGregor gets because he feels it's due to racism. And he said because of this, he feels that racism still exists. And I quote, he goes, "Everything from me and beloved, I'm hated. That just lets you all know that racism still exists. Just know that bum will never be me or be on my level. I'm just built different. My mindset is on another planet. My skills are second to none. I'm a natural born winner. And yes, I talk a lot of trash." This is his quote, but every time I back it up. This is why they hate. It's sad that you can be a poor black kid from the ghetto that has dealt with racism your whole life and work extremely hard to put yourself and your family in a better position. And most of the hate will come from my own people. Conor cannot even win in his own sport, which I mentioned before, but is talking about coming back to boxing to fight Pacquiao. Nobody wants to see that. It's like my leftovers. Pacquiao is Floyd Mayweather's leftovers, given the fact that he beat him already. Is fighting my leftovers and eating my leftovers. Floyd Mayweather also fought Conor McGregor. So the fact that he fought Conor McGregor and Manny Pacquiao, he's basically saying Pacquiao is his leftovers, trying to eat over his leftovers, who he knocked out Conor McGregor. Okay, two things I want to really focus on. I think I want to ask this question. When you really think about why Floyd Mayweather gets so much hate and so much ridicule, and just a bunch of people hate Floyd Mayweather, you have to be honest. There's a lot of people that hate him. The reasons I'm not going to delve into right now, I'm not going to delve into yet, but there are a bunch of reasons. And I'm not giving you my personal opinion. I'm sitting here and just basically formulating and kind of working through it based on the evidence given to me and shown. So just to kind of go back to the quote. In this quote, he mentions that Conor McGregor is trying to bite off of him and copy him. So Conor McGregor, if you know his story, pretty much was a guy that fought his way to prominence. He made crazy predictions, had crazy knockouts. I'll never forget all the trash talk and the theatrics he had before that Jose Aldo fight. And then when he stretched Jose Aldo in the first round and his proclamation and his prediction came true, it was like Muhammad Ali when he made all these outlandish predictions and of knocking people out that had never been knocked out before. He was not only doing it, but then he also picked around, and people went nuts. People loved Ali for his trash talk, but there were also a lot of people that hated Ali too for his trash talk. So just to kind of touch on that, Conor McGregor kind of accelerated his stock value and kind of brought it up by talking trash, following the Mayweather blueprint, following the blueprint laid before that by Muhammad Ali and other greats that, are flashy, flamboyant, and want to sell themselves. Floyd Mayweather made a lot of money, so why are you shocked that Conor McGregor wants to copy you? You sold the most pay-per-views. UFC had really never seen anyone like Conor McGregor, and Conor McGregor seemed to be the goods. He won almost every fight. He lost very few times, and even in his losses, people are in love with this guy. He's this brash, charismatic, in-your-face showman that actually can fight. Say what you want about Conor McGregor. Sure, he's lost a couple of times. Sure, he's taken a couple of L's, but the boy can fight and he's entertainment, right? I know in the fight world, guys love being respectful, and especially in MMA, jiu-jitsu, everyone's very humble and very friendly with one another. But from the audience, a lot of the times, conflict's what sells. Like it's built naturally in our blood to enjoy conflict, right? If you look back in the old days when food was scarce, if you ran out of food, you would go to another town and try to take food from someone else or attack people for something else, and that's just built in you. It's in DNA, right? We're not there anymore, but people like conflict. Conflict sells. You like to have a villain and you like someone to root for. We're very tribal. We like taking sides. We like rooting for a cause, right? That's just kind of human nature. So Conor McGregor would sell a bunch of tickets, sell a bunch of pay-per-views, and he was a money-generating machine. Hence why Floyd Mayweather, right, decided to fight him. He seemingly was retired. He had beaten Pacquiao already. He was on top of the world. He had the record for the most undefeated record fights in a row, retired. Floyd Mayweather potentially was making an argument for himself to be TBE, the best ever. A lot of people don't think he's the best ever. I can't sit here and say that there's a better boxer than Floyd Mayweather. TBE is something, or the best ever. A lot of people have different definitions as to what that is. Some people like to include the political aspect, what they stand for. That's why Ali gets a lot of praise as the best ever. But you can make an argument for a lot of fighters to be the best of all time. However, the way I like to look at it is, if I'm going to sit here and say, strictly from a boxing perspective, I cannot think of someone that's a better boxer than Floyd Mayweather. Is he the best of all time? Would he beat everyone? I don't know. It's a different era, and I really don't like going into that. But if you're looking at purely empirical evidence. Floyd Mayweather is one of the best people at hitting and not getting hit. I know people say, oh, he cherry picked, oh, he did this, he didn't fight that. But if you're just looking at the era that we're in currently, some of the fighters that he fought a bunch of champions. His resume is top notch. I know a lot of people like to say, oh, you didn't fight this person. Oh, you were afraid of so and so for a long time. You let fights marinate, right? I don't know, but if you look at his resume, he fought a bunch of champions and he fought in an era that was just different, with the most pressure, with the most eyes. It's just, I don't know. So whether how you feel Floyd Mayweather is the best ever, that's something in a different time. But the reason why people hate Floyd Mayweather is the question I want to ask. When you're trying to sell pay-per-views, as I said before, people want a villain. If it's two guys that respect each other, people that kind of get along, and right, you're gonna be nice all the way up and respectful, and then you get into the fight, that hatred and that venom towards your opponent isn't really gonna sell, because at the end of the day, you're going in the ring to fight somebody. Sure, you can respect them after. Sure, you can get along after. But the last thing people want to see are two friendly guys in a fight that are fighting like they're friends. When you're getting into a fight, you're entering in a fight or flight response and you're fighting one another. It's that kind of innate it's human nature. The flight or fight response is one of the things that are just built in you. And when you're in that ring, no matter how much you like someone, no matter how much you respect them, you love someone's family, you know their girlfriend, you know their fiance, you know their kids, it doesn't matter. When someone's across from you trying to take your head off, you're going to try to engage in battle with them. And people really don't want to see, when they're paying their pay-per-view and they're paying this, they're going to see you live, they don't want to see a friendly match. They want to see two people in the ring going at it and giving it their all. They don't want to see dirty fighters. They don't want to see people biting, scratching, elbowing to the groin, dirty fighting, out-gouging. That stuff is not part of the sport. But you want to see two competitors giving it their all. So Floyd Mayweather, he kind of figured that out once he got rid of Bob Arum, right? He realized and wanted to adopt the WWE model, where it's entertainment, you want to be a villain. If you look at wrestling, the villain also is probably one of the most popular wrestlers in professional wrestling. Why? Because people love to hate him. He makes the storyline good. He talks a lot of trash. He ruffles the feather of the fans that like the good guy, the protagonist. And you're going to watch him lose. You're going to want to watch him to see if he loses. And if he wins, you're going to want to watch him to see when he's going to lose. So people are going to tune in to watch you fight, or they're going to tune in to watch you lose. So your fans are going to watch you, and the fans that hate you are going to watch you. And what does that equate to? More people watching you. So he kind of realized that after that Oscar De La Hoya fight, that actually during that whole build-up, 24/7 was born. You had a bunch of different things going on that kind of showed you the life of Floyd Mayweather, the way he lived and whatnot. So he started to gain popularity, and little by little, Floyd Mayweather, I know he talks a lot of shit. He talks a lot of trash and says he's this. He says he's better than Ali. He's better than everyone. But you don't see the guy struggle. He wins and he makes guys that are supposed to, he can give him trouble, and he makes them look ordinary. As much as you hate him, maybe he's not the most offensive fighter. His boxing style, counterpuncher sitting back, is not for you. But you cannot deny the fact that Floyd Mayweather is an exceptional boxer. He can defend. He can punch enough to keep you off him, because if he couldn't punch, they would still bull rush him. They wouldn't, run in cautiously, right? He has speed. He can do it all. He can move. He can bang. He can do a little bit of both. He can counterpunch. He's just a complete fighter. Say what you want about him. He may not go out there and, risk his neck in order to fight for the fans, but he's going to do what it takes to win a boxing match, and you can't deny that. However, the thing that bothers me the most about this quote is Floyd Mayweather talks a lot about how people hate him for simple reasons such as racism, right? Conor McGregor, sure, kind of did the same thing in terms of talking trash, and everyone seems to like him. But I think Floyd Mayweather right now, I don't know what's up with him as of late, but something I have noticed, and I'm a big fan of Floyd Mayweather. I'm not a Floyd hater. I think he's one of my favorite fighters of all time. I love watching him. I love his virtuoso performances against some really, really good boxers. He's done it all, retired. It seemed like he should have just been happy. But Floyd Mayweather has constantly, and I mean this constantly, and I don't know why, has tried to remain relevant as someone in boxing. Like, you were the TBE, you said you retired, you did this whole crossover where you wanted to fight Conor McGregor, then you did an exhibition against Tenshin in Japan. Cool, like, that's great. But it seems like he can't let go of the fact that, sure, Floyd Mayweather decided to move on, but he still wants to be boxing, right? Conor McGregor fights, it's the biggest UFC weekend. Whenever Conor fights, Pacquiao's talking about fighting him. There's all this buzz around Ryan Garcia, Tank Davis, around a lot of these guys, and it just seems like every time someone else gets shine, Floyd Mayweather feels like he has to chime in or kind of remain relevant. I disagree in this case that people hate Floyd Mayweather because of purely racism. I'm not sitting here and saying that racism doesn't exist. I'm not going to sit here and say that Floyd doesn't have some people that hate him because of his race. There's always going to be that minority of people that feel a certain way. When you have something or a topic, there's going to be extremes on every level. It doesn't make it right, and I'm not condoning racism at all. I'm a minority myself, and quite frankly, I don't think people hate Floyd Mayweather for that. I personally don't hate Floyd Mayweather, but there are times I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm not going to sit here and say it's annoying, right? Because personally, I'm happy for the guy and I want him and I want other people to win. I like seeing other people win. But Floyd Mayweather has to realize that in this day and age, a lot of people are going through it. Whether you're black, white, whatever, the whole world's going through a pandemic, and from time to time, sometimes I think this guy kind of has lost touch with reality where there's a pandemic going on. You're posting, oh, I'm here on my private jet, or I'm in my jacuzzi with like 8 seats in it, in my mansion with my 40 cars. And there's people worrying about getting evicted, losing their job. People are losing loved ones. They're losing, the integral parts of their family. The last thing you want to see is someone bloviating about money and, oh, I got this. Oh, you're not this, you're not shit. And like, I think sometimes you have to kind of be a little more introspective in the sense that you got to look at yourself in the mirror and realize, like, why are people upset? Did I do something? All right, I'm talking about this, that, and the third. Okay, I'm going to do it anyways, but I understand why people are upset. Like with anything, anytime you have an action, there's going to be a reaction to it, and you can't really be surprised, right? If Floyd Mayweather hears this podcast, let's say, for instance, and he's not happy with what I have to say, I can't sit here and be scared or like surprised that he didn't receive it well, right? I'm trying to be as empirical as possible, and I'm just giving my opinion. But sometimes when someone hears an opinion they don't like, or hear a philosophy that they don't like, hears a philosophy that they don't like, I can't be surprised that they're upset. So I think Floyd Mayweather doesn't really look at how people are upset at him and hated him because of his own philosophy on how to promote himself, right? When you make yourself the villain, when you make yourself, hey, I'm this trash talking, I'm going to insult you, you're not shit, you don't know anything about boxing, I have all the money, flashing money around, walking around with money in your ear, right? Doing things such as like when he was on Fight Hype and got in trouble where Manny Pacquiao sued him for defamation of character. You can't be shocked when people react to your things. When you do something, there's going to be a reaction. Sure, does it make it right? No, but you have to kind of be practical and pragmatic in the sense that somebody could get upset by your actions. If you're constantly throwing things in people's faces, some people can't take it. Some people get annoyed by you, and that's just you, right? I don't think it's because of racism, right? If I'm going through it, I lost my job, right, and my family is dying and I'm getting evicted, I'm going to be a little annoyed when Floyd Mayweather's talking about, oh, hey, man, here's my 25 Phantoms and here's this, here's that. You're going to be pissed off. Is it right? No, because Floyd Mayweather, great athlete, right? He took himself out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. Great story, rags to riches, right? Cool. But if I'm going through it right now, I'm not gonna see like, oh man, look at his story. He was such a cool guy. I wish I had him. I'm like, F this guy, right? In his millions. He could help a whole bunch of people, but he wants to, throw monies at strippers and whatever it is Floyd Mayweather likes to do that's gonna rub people the wrong way. Again, I'm not sitting here and talking from my personal perspective. I'm literally kind of elucidating to the fact why people would be upset at him and why people hate him. After a while, people understand you made a lot of money. We know you made a lot of money, and a lot of people are congratulatory towards you. But when you constantly throw it in people's faces, it could rub certain people the wrong way. Sure, we live in a capitalistic society. Money is worship to a certain degree, and money is power, and there's great things about money. But if that's the only thing you're constantly bringing to the table, don't be surprised when people aren't really embracing you the way, like, all right, Conor McGregor, I'm not going to sit here and say that he's not an asshole and hasn't done certain things, right? You saw that whole bar incident. You saw him talk trash to Khabib and all the excessive shenanigans that went on after that fight. You saw how upset he was. But Conor shouldn't have been surprised that Habib, sorry, got that upset and took it really personal, right? He insulted his religion, he insulted his family, and sure, it's showmanship. Sure, it's trying to sell the fight. Sure, it's trying to sell animosity. But at the end of the day, these words affect people. Certain people don't care for your trash talk, right? Trash talk is fun. I'm not going to sit here and lie that I haven't talked trash, but when people lose their mind and like think I'm being serious, you kind of got to know who to play with and who not to, right? It's part of the whole process and part of the game. So there's certain people that are not going to like your trash talk. There's certain people that aren't going to like your cockiness, and you can't be surprised when you get that stimulus back from that person or that thing, right? But the reason why people, I think, love Conor is he's proud. He showed that he rides for his country as a family man. He came from nothing. He put himself on the line. He fought everyone he had to. I mean, that's kind of the design of the UFC. You can't really pick and choose. So with Floyd, they wanted him to fight other people. The fans felt like Floyd decided to take the easiest route in the route of least resistance. When you look at his resume, he did fight a lot of good guys too, and I think a lot of people forget that pretty boy Floyd fought. He fought a lot of people. He fought Corrales. He fought Castillo. He fought a lot of good fighters, right? And he's made a lot of fighters look ordinary again. So towards the end, the whole Pacquiao, people wanted to see him fight, and that whole Pacquiao stands versus Mayweather stands, it just became this almost, I don't want to sit here and say cancer because I hate using that word, but it was kind of a cancer for the sport, right? Both sides were toxic. Both sides really couldn't do anything but back their fighter, and it was always one person was better than the other, and they would just constantly berate one another. Right? I don't want to go back into that, but if you look back, that's what it was, right? It was toxicity. And there's certain people that never really felt like they got their just due when Floyd never lost, right? The beautiful thing about the villain in movies and the reason why we like when a villain loses is that you feel like there's vindication. You feel like there's closure. You feel like someone had retribution. And with Floyd, he just keeps winning. He's winning in life. He has a bunch of money. And in certain ways, you have to say that he reached the pinnacle of his sport. He never lost and can retire truthfully, arguably, as TBE, right? And we never got that closure, the people that were upset at him. With Conor, I feel like he's lost a bunch of times. People have abandoned him sometimes, but he showed humility and he showed growth. Floyd never was humbled because he didn't have to be humbled. So people are still going to hate him. They hate his arrogance. They hate the way he carries himself. And I think if you really look at this whole problem in a vacuum, I'm not going to sit here and say there aren't racists out there that hate Floyd just for the fact that he's black, right? Just for the fact that he's black is the reason why, hey, I can't stand this guy. But you also have to look at it as, I'm sure there's people out there, no matter if he was white, black, Hispanic, whatever nationality, would still hate him because of the way he carries himself. I mean, he got in trouble for domestic violence. I'm not going to sit here and throw someone's dirty laundry out there. But again, when you get wrapped up in certain things where there's scandal, there's allegations of abuse. There's just things that get thrown around. You can't be shocked when people say bad things about you or say things about you. And that's pretty much what I want to say. I think Floyd Mayweather sometimes needs to just be a little more cognizant of his position and his platform and his spotlight, where I get it, you have fuck you money. What's the point of having fuck you money if you can't say fuck you a bunch of times? However, if you say fuck you a bunch of times, you can't be shocked when people say fuck you back. And I think he just needs to kind of stop trying to compare himself to others and realize that he's not Conor McGregor, and Conor McGregor is never going to be him. Sure, Conor McGregor is going to emulate you, right? But remember, imitation is the best form of flattery. If something you're doing is working, you can't be shocked when people also adopt that strategy to become successful. And I think that's what Conor McGregor did. He rose to the pinnacle of his sport using a formula that you kind of did create, right? But if you look back, you kind of copied off of Muhammad Ali. You didn't see Muhammad Ali being like, oh, look at Floyd Mayweather. He's doing exactly what I'm doing, but I didn't get paid hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. I hate Floyd Mayweather. Would you say, and if Ali went out and said, oh yeah, this is happening because of racism, you would kind of be like, nah, that's not really the reasons why. So I think this isn't because of racism. People hate Floyd because Floyd sometimes doesn't realize how he comes across to certain people, and he seems a little disconnected sometimes. He's a little brash. He's very, very arrogant. And look, certain people don't like that kind of stuff. I personally don't mind it because I just love watching the guy box. If that's what comes with you being the best, you have to have some sort of ego and some sort of arrogance in order to be the best at anything, right? That's just the truth. Same thing with Conor. He had to walk around like he's the baddest man on the planet. If not, no one would buy his pay-per-view. And someone that's bigger than him or someone that's very, very challenging and a very good fighter is across from him. So I think Floyd, I don't think the reason people hate you or show hate towards you is racism. And even in your own quote, you say it's from your own people. So are your own people, being black people, are they racist against you? Like they're black too. So I don't know. It just kind of seemed like it didn't make sense. And honestly, I think if me being such a Floyd fan, I'm going to kind of, sit this one out, but I'm a little disappointed in the fact that you've literally made it. You made almost $1 billion in boxing. You retired undefeated. Clearly, you're one of the best boxers of all time, possibly. Definitely of our era, for sure, our era. I just don't know how much more you have to prove. And when you put stuff out like this, trying to take away from someone else that just lost, you keep saying Conor McLoser, you keep throwing shots at people when they lose. Like, I get you haven't lost at your sport, but in MMA, that's why Habib was such a great champion. He never lost in MMA. That's why other fighters in MMA get celebrated, because it's a different sport. Like, there's so many more variables you have to deal with, and like, I get that you have to be a champion and adjust, but not everyone was fortunate like you, Floyd. And I think sometimes, like, I know you worked hard for it, I know you never experienced that, but you got to kind of show some sort of empathy and be empathetic to the plight of other people. And I think the brash arrogance sometimes, like, it's great for showmanship, but if you constantly just throw that side out there, people are going to think that's who you are. I personally don't think Floyd Mayweather's like that in real life. I think it's a brand thing. I think he has to do that for his image and a bunch of things. I think Floyd possibly is probably a really nice guy in person, probably pretty nice, well-spoken, soft-spoken, not a shithead all the time. Sure, you're going to be cocky and arrogant a little bit. That's just part of being the best at anything. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to talk about that and wanted to see more or less how you guys feel. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast on Apple. Feel free to write a review. I've actually been getting a lot of good reviews lately, and I'm very, very excited about that. But I also want to hear any negative feedback. Feel free to leave that. But I would appreciate if you could leave a rating on Apple, follow me on Spotify, and also support the Instagram at Good Boxing Podcast. Thank you so much. Episode 76. Let me know your thoughts. Have a great night. Be well.